the instructions of the spiritual master. Now, when we get an instruction, I was talking about the theme of empowerment. Now you can take up instructions as 3 different metaphors to understand. It's like a seed, it's like a buried treasure. And it's like a compass. So each of these points to different aspects, and I'll focus on this as we see the unfolding of the mission. We'll see how Srila Prabhupada, his following the instruction of his spiritual master, worked out. Now each of these metaphors points to a particular thing. When we use the word seed, the idea of a seed is that it has something potential, but it has to be protected, it has to be cultivated, it has to be nourished. So the idea of a seed is primarily that there is potential, but the potential has to be released. The idea of a buried treasure is that something is fully formed already, but what we have to reach it. I hope the difference is clear over here. That when we don't have to do anything with the treasure. The jewel is already there, buried underground, but we have to reach it. And when we talk about a compass, we may say that doesn't seem like a treasure, but if somebody is in the ocean and they are lost in the vast ocean with all the directions seeming the same, then the compass is a direction pointer, and then that has to be followed. It has to be used to find a way or to go along the way. So at different times, instructions may play different roles in a devotee's life. So when Srila Prabhupada was told by his spiritual master, speak in the English language, share this message of Mahaprabhu all over the world, it was a very broad, ambitious instruction. Now there is no evidence that Prabhupada talked about the specifics. Okay, how do you want me to do this? Do you want me to go to America? Do you want me to go to Germany? Do you want me to go to UK? And how will the funds come for that? There's no specifics of those instruction. But for Prabhupada, at the very least, it was like a compass. He kept it in his mind for 40 years. He didn't have an opportunity to follow it. Or at least he tried various ways to follow it. But whatever he was trying, it didn't work out. Now sometimes we expect an instruction should be it should lead to like a well-paved path. That everything is comfortable in the path, I just follow the path. It's not like that. We might get a direction, but how to go along the direction, it's something which we have to decide. If you see, Krishna told Arjuna that 𝐂𝐻𝐌𝐌𝐍 nihatah purvameva nimittamatram bhava savyasachi. He says, by my arrangement, all your enemies are killed. Just be an instrument in my fight. Now, this might seem to indicate that everything is settled already. But if we look at the subsequent fight that happened, it was not that Krishna was trying to microcontrol Arjuna. It was not that before picking up each arrow, Arjuna was asking Krishna, is this what you want me to do? Is this what you want me to do? No, Arjuna was his own person, and Krishna wanted Arjuna to be his own person. There are certain key points when Arjuna either consulted Krishna or Krishna gave some inputs. But the idea was, even with Krishna present right next to Arjuna, Krishna had no interest in micro-controlling Arjuna. It is Krishna has given Arjuna his individuality, and Krishna wanted Arjuna to use his individuality. So it is not that the idea of surrender or following instruction is meant to be a matter of losing our individuality. It is that we get a direction for life. It is that ultimately we understand Krishna has given us some gifts and Krishna wants us to use those gifts in the mood of service. Yeah, like going back to the river metaphor, the river knows I have to get to the ocean. But the river has to find its way to the ocean. It's not that nature, the same nature which calls the river to go to the ocean also tells this is the way to go. No, there's a lot of individuality over there. And different rivers find different ways. Sometimes the river itself changes its way with time. The river keeps going toward the ocean, but sometimes the river's way changes by miles. That's why if you go to Mayapur, the Ganga has shifted. It's finding its way toward the ocean. So, till this point, broadly speaking, we can say, for Srila Prabhupada, his Gurudev's instruction was like a compass. And he was trying to follow it. And he said, yes, I couldn't do it immediately. One may not neglect or reject the Guru's instructions, but one can suspend it. Okay, I cannot do this right now. I'm not in the right place or whatever. But Prabhupada always had it in his mind. And it was that which was the driving force for him, which had now brought him to America at that advanced age. Now when Prabhupada came to America, I would like to use one further metaphor over here. It is the metaphor of a dance stage. Now, that if there is a dancer who is going to dance, now even the most expert dancer can't dance if the floor is slippery. They can, but it's difficult. They'll slip and fall. So on one side, the dance performance has to be done well. One side, the dancer has to be expert, has to learn the skill of dancing. And then those who are the organizers, they have to create the dance stage. When both are there, then the dance performance becomes wonderful. So we're talking about how the love between Krishna and his devotee. So, Prabhupada, his efforts in India are said to be a lifetime in preparation. Prabhupada had tried, is this working? Is this the way for the Ganga of his consciousness to go to the ocean of outreach, ocean of sharing Krishna's message with the world? This path is not working, this path is not working, this path is not working. Prabhupada kept trying. And now, without his knowing, Krishna was creating a stage for Prabhupada. That Prabhupada in his prayer, Markine Bhagavad Dharma says, Nachao, nachao Prabhu, jao se mate. Please, oh Lord, make me dance, make me dance. And Krishna didn't just empower Prabhupada to dance, but Krishna provided Prabhupada a stage on which he could dance. Now, what happened was, 1965, when Prabhupada reached America, America was at a very special, distinctive phase in history. So I'll talk about this from a cultural, intellectual, and political perspective. So from a cultural perspective, see, every society has its mainstream culture. But now there are people outside the mainstream culture. So these people who don't follow the culture, they are called the counterculture. They don't just not follow the mainstream culture, but they do things opposite. So this counterculture, actually the period from around 1961 till around 69, this was the period when the counterculture in America was very active. What happened was that Americans won the Second World War. Now, we could say the Allies won. Russia also became a superpower. But Russia suffered a very severe toll because Hitler attacked Russia and he came almost to Moscow. So now America, apart from Pearl Harbor, was not attacked. And America supplied weapons to all the Allies. Although American soldiers were killed, quite a bit. But overall, see, America is geographically a very blessed country. It's protected by oceans from all sides and two neighbors who are not very powerful or threatening, Canada and Mexico. So anyway, America became very prosperous after the First World War. Sorry, not the First, the Second World War. And the children who were born to the people who became parents in the who came out of the First World War, 1945, 46, they came back, they married, they had children. Their kids were teenagers, 15, 17, 18, 20. Now these kids had everything that their parents had dreamed of. They had material prosperity, material indulgence. And what had happened was, the idea was, everything that previous generations had dreamt for, we already got it all. And it's unfulfilling. There has to be something more to life. Okay, you get married, you have a job, you have children. After that, what is more is there in life? Is there something they were searching? And somehow at that time, the idea came up, that it came primarily from India. Like these, in some traditions, say for example, some people take bhang. And bhang they consider like a sacred drink. It becomes an intoxicant, but they think it's a sacred drink. In the Native American tradition, that's peyote. So they had the idea that drugs will make us develop some spiritual insights. So Prabhupada went to that place where there were people exploring alternatives to the mainstream American culture of material success and material prosperity. And they were open to Indian spirituality because a number of Indian leaders had come before. And they were also exploring drugs. So it was in this combination that Prabhupada landed. Prabhupada came to Butler, Pennsylvania, because that's where his sponsor had been. And there he was treated not like a spiritual teacher, but like a curiosity object. That, who is this strange Swami? He wears these strange clothes. I think I mentioned to you earlier, for Americans, when they see a dhoti, for them it just seems it's a weird dress. It just makes no sense. So, if that had been the age of social media, the people of Butler would have said, Swamiji, can I have a selfie with you? So they had no interest in self-realization. So Prabhupada stayed in Butler. It's interesting, when he stayed at the house of Gopal and Sali Agarwal. So Sali Agarwal says that Swamiji was the easiest guest I ever had. That he would cook for himself. If I didn't have time, he would chant. I didn't have to ever entertain him. But he was always so curious. He wanted to know how the washing machine works, how the vacuum cleaner works, how the metro railway works. Now, did Prabhupada go to America to learn how a vacuum cleaner works? No, Prabhupada was trying to understand how the American mind works. How do people think over here? How do people live over here? And then from there, he got an opportunity to go to some universities in Philadelphia to talk. He gave some talks, and after that, he saw there's not much prospect, so he got an invitation to come to New York, and there was a yoga teacher who was from an impersonalist orientation. So when he saw Prabhupada wanted to speak on Bhakti, he said, Swami, you can do kirtans, but you can't speak. So Prabhupada said, if I only want to do kirtans. So he saw that in the West, traditionally in India, yoga was primarily something followed by male renunciates for self-realization. But in the West, yoga has become very highly rebranded. And in the West, yoga is followed primarily by females interested in more getting physical fitness and physical looks so that they can attract a better partner. So it's almost completely opposite. But the people who can do this, they are generally upper middle class, upper class. That clientele was there. And Prabhupada saw that at that time they were not very interested in spirituality. But there are some people who would come, their clothes were disheveled, their hair would be like a forest, wild forest. Often their bodies would be smelling because they wouldn't take a bath, and often it was clear that they were not talking properly. They were stoned on drugs. But somehow he saw that these were the people who seemed to be interested in talking, learning about spirituality. And then it went for a few weeks. And they said, Swamiji, if you want interested people, you come to where we are staying. There are a lot of young interested people. So Prabhupada decided he will go there. Now, like in India, normally every place, there are different localities and there are different reputations. Like in Chicago, we may know Chicago for its reputation, but Chicago is considered the crime capital of America. So there's some areas, if you go and you get robbed, and you go to the police say, why did you go there? Even we don't go there. This is not to criticize Chicago. Every city has some places like that. So the Lower East Side was a place like that. See, America is a country where anybody can have guns legally. So this Lower East Side was a place where there were hippies who were high on drugs, and there are people who are sharpshooters. Sharpshooters means, they just shoot for practice. I mean, why they would shoot? They were on drugs. You can't even know why they shot. But so the person who was hosting Prabhupada, Dr. Mishra, he said, Swamiji, you cannot go there. That's a very dangerous place. That's not a place for a person like you. So it was, you cannot imagine a more incompatible situation. Because from the perspective, you can look at it from the perspective of age, from the perspective of behavior, from the perspective of culture, from the perspective of learning, from the perspective of religiosity. Religiosity means how much people were interested in God. If you consider Prabhupada was 69, 70. The hippies had a slogan that never trust anyone above 30. So they said, we are rebels. Rebels without a cause and rebels without a pause. So just rebel for rebel's sake. From their behavior, they just had, as I said, that their only regulative principle was to break all regulative principles. He says, it was just, you eat meat, then you take wine, and you get a lot of energy, you have illicit sex. Actually, that was not even the idea of illicit sex over there. It was just that they thought that there was something called sexual revolution that came up in America. So the idea is that the previous generations, everybody was sexually repressed. That the morality of the past was just something to stop people from enjoying natural sexual pleasure. So they didn't see it as a degradation, they saw that as freedom. It's just my right. And who is there to stop me from it? But it led to an epidemic of loneliness. And it was disastrous. But at that time it was you could say the honeymoon phase of the sexual revolution. People thought we'll have free love. So the culture was very different. As far as learning, Prabhupada had spent a lifetime studying Shastra. Because Prabhupada had to travel so much. Prabhupada had his busy business, he had a busy family life. But Prabhupada traveled for his business, and during his traveling, he would carry books and he would read during his travels. As far as religiosity was concerned, Prabhupada was utterly devoted to God. 1966 was the time when the Time magazine had published a big headline, Is God Dead? So is God dead? What is the idea? That actually, that whole trend is even now there. I was in Australia in 2017 and we had an interfaith conference. The title of that conference was, Why Has God Not Died Till Now? So basically from the time of Friedrich Nietzsche, he was predicting that God is going to die. That means he said, already science has proven God does not exist. But even culturally, the idea of God is going to die. Because people will stop believing in it. It has not happened. Like all over the world, in different places, religiosity is going up. But anyway, these people many of them had no interest in religiosity, no interest in God. And not only that, in terms of, if you consider their maturity, Prabhupada was not just old, but Prabhupada was very wise and experienced. These people were very impulsive. So Prabhupada, it was a complete mismatch between teacher and audience from a material perspective. But from a spiritual perspective, there was a match. Prabhupada saw that they have a spiritual spark. This is actually Prabhupada's capacity to see beyond externals. Later on, one of his godbrothers said, Swamiji was a businessman, and because he was a businessman, he mixed with all kinds of people. And that's how he was able to preach to these hippies and he made them into devotees. And as far as we were concerned, we were born in Brahmin families. We took sannyas at the age of 15. We've always lived among pure people. So anyway, the Swamiji has done some service, we appreciate the service. But he was trying to, it was a snide remark to try to put Prabhupada down. But actually it was not just because of Prabhupada's business skills or anything like this, Prabhupada's compassion. See, generally it is very difficult. Actually, it's more than maturity, I forgot this. It's like language itself. That was a big problem. Because Prabhupada's accent was heavily Bengali. He spoke English, but for them to understand Prabhupada's Bengali English was very difficult. Even now, most Indians, we have learned English, we have probably watched many English movies. And even now, if somebody goes to America, they generally have to do TOEFL or something like that. There's spoken English test that is done. And even then, people find it difficult to understand. So, for Prabhupada, like the material obstacles were so many. The way he survived and succeeded, Prabhupada had, so there was some spiritual openness. I wouldn't even say they were receptive, they were open. Receptive means they're eager to hear and accept. Prabhupada had to earn credibility. See, in India and West, in India the culture is much more hierarchical. This is authority and this is a subordinate. But in the West, it is not like that. It is very horizontal. This is the authority, the subordinate. So respect cannot be assumed. That means, I'm older than you. I have studied this subject. I know my business. In India, traditionally, if somebody is older, we'll at least behave in a little bit more respectfully with them. But in the West, respect has to be earned. It's not that there is no respect, but just because you are old, that means you are a dinosaur. That doesn't mean you are a source of wisdom. That just means you are outdated now. You should be extinct. Somehow you are not become extinct. That is the attitude. So, respect had to be earned. It was extremely difficult for Srila Prabhupada. Now, I said that they used to take this drug called LSD. Now, LSD is the name of a chemical, but they had given it a new name, League of Spiritual Discovery. So, anybody who takes this drug, they join the League of Spiritual Discovery. And just like yesterday, I was telling about some person who said that the goddess has possessed us, and they start dancing wildly. So then everybody around says that, okay, don't disturb this person. The goddess has come in this person. So like that, when people would take drugs, they would go high and they would blurt out anything. And the idea is everybody is saying this person has become an LSD saint now. So this person is seeing something mystical and is speaking some divine realizations. Just sit and hear. And Prabhupada would be giving classes and suddenly somebody would just go on a drug high and start speaking crazy things. And Prabhupada just have to wait and watch for that person to complete speaking what they have spoken, and then the person will slow down, then Prabhupada would continue his class. It was extremely difficult, the kind of audience that he had. And then he finally was staying in one place where the other person who was staying over there, David Allen, he seemed to be interested in growing spiritually. Prabhupada was very hopeful, he wrote to in India that he may become the first Vaishnava in the Western world. And that was the person who took drugs, went high, and came to attack Prabhupada. And, he was young and he was mad basically. And Prabhupada was 70. No, suddenly Krishna came flying in between and stopped him. Prabhupada just had to leave. The 3 flights of stairs. Prabhupada had to rush down the stairs, and Prabhupada came in the middle of the road. And he didn't know where to go, what to do. It was not just the physical lack of place, but it's also the trust. If you're living with someone, you're hoping that person becomes a follower, that person comes and attacks you. Why should I even be here? Prabhupada had gone to America with a 2-month visa. And at the end of every 2 months, he had the chance to just leave. But Prabhupada stayed on. And Prabhupada had practically no money at all. He would himself go to bookstores, place his book in the bookstores, and when they would have different shifts, when the employee would change, Prabhupada would again go and write an endorsement for his own book. This is a very good book. And somebody would buy the book and then he would get some money for his books. So, Prabhupada had no source of money also over there. People would sometimes he had his books, basically he would try to sell the books. He had no job, he had no support of livelihood. But somehow he continued on. And then Prabhupada was doing classes in his Lower East Side, and he had no means to publicize the classes. So Prabhupada used the oldest way to publicize. That is, he would himself go for long walks. And in America, he was like a strikingly different sight. He was elderly, he was wearing saffron robes. And during one such program, he was walking along, and there was one young man, Howard Wheeler. He was walking on the other side. He was planning to go to his friend Keith, and they were both going to take drugs. And both of them had gone to India in search of a guru. They were spiritually interested, but they had found that they'd run into two problems. Those people who seemed to be enlightened didn't know any English. They used to live in caves in Rishikesh and Himalayas. And those who knew English were like priests in temple that they didn't seem at all enlightened. So they came back disappointed. And then he was walking along and he was looking around and he saw, hey, Swami. He said, have I taken drugs already? So there's a big lorry that went by. I thought, is this Swami still be there, or is it like I'm hallucinating? The lorry went by and he saw that Swami was still there. Oh, okay. Then he started looking carefully. And then that Swami turned and looked at him. And then another lorry went by. And I looked and that Swami was smiling at him. Then he ran across. Swami, are you from India? He said, yes. And you? He said, no, I'm from America, but I've been to India. And they walked and talked, and Howard says that the first thing that struck me was all of these big lorries were going by and suddenly huge noise and then no noise. He said Prabhupada was completely unfazed, as if he was anchored in some reality far beyond the Lower East Side. And they walked along and Prabhupada showed him the place where he was having his programs, the matchless gift shop. And he said, I'll come and I'll get my friends also. And then he and Keith became the first serious followers of Srila Prabhupada. And still only a few people were coming. It was a small program. So Prabhupada decided, let's go out. So he said, let's go out and do kirtan in a park. Now, and Prabhupada went and started doing the kirtan. Even now if you go to New York, there's a Tompkins Square Park. And Tompkins Square Park, there's a small tree. And on that tree, or below that tree, they have put a plaque. They call it the Hare Krishna tree. And they say, the name would say the Hare Krishna tree, and this is the place where the founder sang, and it is from here that the Hare Krishna movement began. So Prabhupada sat and started singing. And as Prabhupada was singing and singing, he closed his eyes. He was absorbed in singing. And now some of his students, he had told them how to dance. So now they started dancing. Initially they were a little shy. What are we doing over here? But they started dancing. Then others started dancing. And Prabhupada kept singing and kept singing. And passers-by stopped and watched. And there's one passer-by, he said that, hey, what's going on over there? All these people are singing and dancing. He had to watch for 5-7 minutes before he even noticed Prabhupada. Because everybody was doing their own thing, dancing in different ways, singing in different ways. It was not even call and response. Because, they had no idea. Like Prabhupada was singing, sometimes somebody was singing half a mantra with him, then half a mantra later. It was very sublime, but it was chaotically sublime. So, he noticed Swami, oh, who is this person? Everybody, like, every hippie was dressed in a strange way, but still at least there was some familiarity in the strangeness. But then, who is this person? And after, for 2-3 minutes, he looked and he saw, actually, this person who is sitting with closed eyes, singing, this person is actually the center of this whole thing. And it's from here that everything is coming. And finally, almost after 30 minutes, Prabhupada opened his eyes, and there are 200 people dancing and singing. And it is from that point onwards that Prabhupada started getting some significant followers. And these were young and adventurous people, and Prabhupada engaged them. Prabhupada was not a person who presented spirituality. Prabhupada told the devotees later on who were going in college preaching. He said, the worst thing you can do is present Krishna consciousness as a set of rules. This Krishna consciousness is actually a call to divine adventure. A call to adventure in the service of the divine. In 1968, he called all of his leading students, and he had a picture of a globe. And he told all of them, and all of you pick up one country and go and deliver that country. One of his disciples was a 16-and-a-half-year-old girl, Jadurani. She says, Swamiji, what about us girls? He says, we are not boys or girls. You are also a soul. You also pick up one country. So, Prabhupada not only gave this kind of extraordinary instructions. But Prabhupada had that faith, the devotees who were there with Prabhupada, just by Prabhupada's conduct, they felt that Krishna is a real, loving, living person, and if we try to serve him, he will help us. Says, how will we go to a new country? How will we preach? Krishna will help you. And how things worked out. That itself was amazing. So in New York, they started the center. And then some of the devotees who were a little bit more adventurous. Even at that time also, there were liberals and there were conservatives. So the main leaders of New York were a bit more conservative. They said, okay, we have to wake up in the morning, we have to follow these rules, we cannot eat this food, we cannot do this. And some devotees who went from there, they felt that, this is too stifling for us. So we'll go to a new place and we will reach out. So just like the counterculture was there over here in New York, it was also there in San Francisco. So two of his leading disciples, they went there. And they met people and they told about Swamiji. And they were just so much on fire that then within a short time, they created a whole foundation for them and they sent Swamiji a flight ticket. This is the first time Prabhupada flew. And when Prabhupada came out at the airport, there was first time the scene that would be repeated hundreds of times all over the world. Prabhupada came out and there were almost 50 to 100 people chanting Hare Krishna to welcome him. And Prabhupada was amazed. He said, it's the first time I'm coming to a city. I haven't spoken one word and so many people are chanting. So that was, Krishna was creating the stage for Prabhupada. So at a cultural level, this happened just before Prabhupada came out, 3 months before. Had liberalized its immigration rules. Because America, what happened was that after 1920, after the First World War, they have found a lot of Chinese and Japanese people were coming there. And they felt these people are taking over our country. Especially Japanese, they felt that because Japan to China, from San Francisco to LA is quite relatively closer. They felt too many people are coming and these people fought against us. So they clamped down on immigration rules. But they didn't have sufficient manpower. So in 1964, just before Prabhupada came, 3 months before, the American government liberalized the rules. Otherwise, Prabhupada, 2 months, he wouldn't have been able to extend his visa. 2 months, he extended 8 times. And finally, the US government said, enough, now we cannot extend anymore. And then, by that time, he had got some follow. Almost 10 times he extended. Almost 20 months. We can't extend anymore. So then, this Prabhupada said, what can be done? So then they said, there's standard. You might have seen movies also about this. People get married. Sometimes somebody pretends to get married to an American woman, or an Indian man gets married to an American woman. Now, Indian man can get married to an American man also. That also happens. But anyway, so Prabhupada was so transcendental. He told his disciples, you adopt me as your son. Now Prabhupada was the age of their grandfather. But then Krishna arranged that there was a well-known musician, Allen Ginsberg. So he came to he had heard about the Hare Krishna mantra. And he came to Prabhupada. He said, what can I do for Swamiji? And they said that he has this legal issue. He said, contact my attorney. And then after that, Prabhupada didn't have any problems. So somehow Prabhupada managed to stay over there at that time. And after that, in 1968, Prabhupada came once to India because he wanted to, his health was not good. But 1970, he came back. And he came back with more than 100 devotees from America, from Canada, from UK. And some few from Australia also. And it created a sensation in India. Because while many other spiritual leaders, few other spiritual leaders had gone before and they had come back, but nobody had actually culturally transformed people. See, they had got people to appreciate some Vedantic thought and then they would come along. But here, people saw for the first time Americans and British people wearing dhoti, kurta and sari. It was just stunning. The Times of India published an editorial saying that this is the India was ruled by these foreigners. India is now culturally conquering the West. And wherever Prabhupada went, at that time Prabhupada started a life membership program. He saw still See, India, it was not that India suddenly became ready for philosophical spirituality. That didn't happen. So it took time for that. That started happening in 85, 90 onwards. But Prabhupada saw that these people, that India had a very deep-rooted national inferiority complex because we had been ruled by so much by foreigners. So there was that cultural nationalistic pride. And Prabhupada tapped that. Prabhupada would say in India that, no, this Bhagavad Gita is the book from India, but to teach the book from India in India, I have to get from people from outside India. One time he says one lecture, this movement is from India, but I am the only Indian in this movement. So he called upon Indians to take it up. And he soon saw that Indians are not ready to take it up in the same way his foreign disciples were dedicated. So then he created a life membership program. And at that time, ISKCON was so prestigious that one devotee wrote a biography of Prabhupada. He showed me in his research, like he went to see a lawyer, and he had a degree, BCom, LLB, ISKCON life member. He had put on his nameplate itself. So ISKCON, the name had become such a glamorized thing. Oh, this Swami went to America and he has made Americans into devotees. And it was a phenomenal sensation. And then he started working on the Juhu temple and the Vrindavan temple, the Mayapur temple. And Prabhupada came to Mayapur. It was just an overgrown wilderness. And Prabhupada planted his cane on the ground. And he said, this will be our international headquarters. And the devotee said, we don't see even a national person over here. One national person is not there, international headquarters. How is it going to happen? But what seemed remote to the material vision, Prabhupada knew, this is the place where Mahaprabhu had appeared. And now we see a grand spiritual community. Like a spiritual township has come up over there. So Prabhupada had that vision. And when he started working, different devotees started going to different countries. And they started preaching and they started getting followers and they started bringing people to India. Year after year, the movement just kept growing. So in the last 11 years, 1960, the movement was started till 1977. Prabhupada was completely immersed. Now, all day he would be speaking about Krishna to the people who came to meet him. And all night he was speaking about Krishna to the people who had not yet come to meet him by writing his books. And in that way, he was creating a legacy. And Prabhupada wanted his devotees to take responsibility right from the beginning itself. Just when the devotees were 4 or 5 years old, he created a GBC so that they would start managing. And when 1977, it became clear that his health was going down. So at that time, he was asked, who will be your successors? And Prabhupada gave different answers at different times. But Prabhupada one time said, whoever wants to be. What he meant by that was that yes, while institutionally some of the devotees became gurus and became GBC, but he said that, what did I get from my spiritual master? He did not get any institution, he did not get any money, he did not get any followers. The gift that he got from his spiritual master was the desire to glorify Krishna. The desire to love Krishna and the desire to share the glories of love of Krishna to others. And that is the blessing that Srila Prabhupada gave to his followers. And from that desire to glorify Krishna, temples came. From that desire to glorify Krishna, books came. From that desire to glorify Krishna, devotees came. So, for all of us at this particular place, and this is the place where Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur planted in Prabhupada's heart the seed to glorify Krishna. And that seed has blossomed as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness all over the world now, with hundreds and hundreds of centers across the world. At one level, it's like a buried treasure in the sense that the potential for loving Krishna is there within each heart. And we just need to excavate it, uncover it. But how it will manifest in the world, it is up to each one of us. Here, just as that seed was planted in Prabhupada's heart, we can pray to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur and we can pray to Prabhupada that by their blessings, may that seed be planted into our heart. We all have difficulties in life, but the desire to glorify Krishna can empower us to overcome all difficulties and to continue on to enrich our hearts and enrich the hearts of everyone whose path crosses ours. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we are very grateful to Chaitanya Charan Prabhu that Prabhuji had a very tight schedule. Now Prabhu has another class right now also. He will be going and giving an international class. So Prabhu is so tightly scheduled. We have made his schedule so tight since morning. Prabhu has been traveling and everywhere he has been waiting for us and giving us such a wonderful nectarian Katha on Srila Prabhupada, helping us understand from the perspective. Many devotees were sharing with me that how Prabhu has explained us about Prabhupada in a perspective we may never understand. So it is in a very historical way what all things went through in the background. We generally hear just the Leelas, but in the background what will happen. So let us thank Chaitanya Charan Prabhu to help us understand the untold glories of Srila Prabhupada so wonderfully in both these places by 3 times loudly chanting Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai. Okay, can we have one group photo? Can we have one group photo? So we'll have one group photo with Prabhuji.